Thank you for joining us for this week's message at Crosswind Church. If you have any questions about this message or about Crosswind Church, please visit us at www.crosswindchurch.net, or you can email us at info@crosswindchurch.net.
Well, good morning. My name is Jeremy, and I'm the pastor here at Crosswind Church. Listen, I just wanted, before I get started, I'm so thankful that we have such an amazing team here at our church. Last week, I got to chaperone, we'll tell you a little more about this in the message. I got to chaperone 38 7th and 8th graders to Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. And so I appreciate all of your prayers. But Garrett just did an amazing job last week, and I'm super excited. Today we get a brand new series. If you're a guest with us, I'm so glad you're here. Let me tell you how we do things at Crosswind. We pick a topic we want to talk about, and we talk about it until we're done talking about it, and then we pick another topic and we go and talk about that. And today we get to start this brand new series called Overwhelmed. How many of you all know what Murphy's Law is? Just a hand in the air. Murphy's Law essentially says this. It says that if anything can go wrong, it will. And there have been various times in the Powell life, like in the life of the Powells, where Murphy's Law just didn't apply to our lives. It felt like Murphy moved in with us, and those sorts of things happened. I was reminded, as I was thinking about that this last week, of a period of several months where it just seemed like nothing could go right. In hindsight, it's actually kind of funny, so I hope you kind of laugh along with us, but in the moment, it was just absolutely crazy. So to give you kind of a little bit of perspective and baseline to kind of start the story with, it was in that 2005-2006 range. Jody's mom was battling cancer for the second time. We had Emma. She was young. By the time we get to the point in our story, she was around 2 years old, and Jody was pregnant with Abigail. That was kind of in process. We had moved into a new home that we were kind of still trying to set up. You know, you never really get completely done with new homes, and so that's kind of where we were with regard to that. I around that time also had hurt my back really badly. I used to laugh at people that had hurt their back and like call them old men and old women and like, you know, why don't you get your cane, that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, when you hurt your back, like you stop making fun of people who hurt their back. Like it was really serious. And to come to find out, it wasn't just like a pulled muscle. I actually had a fungal infection in my L3, L4 vertebrae that was deteriorating the bone and causing some immense pain. There was a period of time at 28 years old where I walked with a cane for a little while. It was the only way that I could get around. It was absolutely terrible. Okay, so that was kind of going on. I had a kind of like a permanent IV called PICC-line in my arm. Was receiving IV antibiotics, antifungals on a regular basis. That was baseline for us. That was like everyday kind of normal where we kind of lived at that particular time. Jody worked at a school, and I worked at a church at this time in the period of our lives. And one day at work, it was about 4:15 or so, I got this phone call from my wife. And have you ever gotten a phone call from someone, and you're just a little bit unsure as to whether or not they're crying hysterically or laughing hysterically? That was the phone call I got from my bride. And she calls me, and at first I think she's laughing. And what I can get out of her is, come home, house flooded. So I lived about maybe a quarter of a mile from the house, from the church, like we lived pretty close. So I'd run outside and jump in my vehicle, and I'd get to the house. And this is where I find my pregnant wife in the dress that she had worn to school that day to teach in, on her knees in the front yard with a T-wrench. You know what that is, that big thing that you use to shut the water off at the road, trying to figure out how to use this wrench to cut the water off. I saw that as I pulled into the driveway. I looked at my front door, the front door to our house, a house that we had just bought a year or so earlier, and there I see water, not like a trickle of water, like a waterfall coming out of the front door of the house. You see, what happened is probably right after we left to go to work and to school that day, the water line that went to our refrigerator for the ice maker, you know how convenient that thing is, it had actually pumped out a little hole punctured in it, and it began to spew water, and it spewed water all day long. We got the water shut off, but by the time I got in my house, all on the first floor of our house was somewhere between 2 to 3 inches of water, depending on the proximity to the refrigerator. Like it was deeper near the fridge than it was away from the fridge. And so I look at Jody and I'm like, you've got to call our insurance company. I call people from the church. Like we had people with shop vacs. There was so much water in our house. I had a push broom. I just propped the back door open, and with the push broom, I was just pushing water out of the house. Like that was it. It's crazy. We got people that help us. We picked whatever furniture we could salvage out of the first floor of our house, dining room furniture, living room furniture, all sorts of stuff. Just begin to move it out into the garage. Like our cars didn't get to live in their house anymore because all of our first floor stuff had to go in the car's house in the garage. That's where it kind of went. We got it out there, and within a matter of a week or so, all of the floors on our first floor had been ripped up, carpet, hardwood, it didn't matter. We were down to concrete foundation. Now, praise God, we were still good because I was receiving IV antibiotics still every day. And so we had it upstairs with some bedrooms and a little living space. And so we were able to we just moved upstairs. That was all we did. We just moved upstairs. We have ServPro there. Everything's kind of drying out. Everything's kind of good. And we lived like that for a number of months. You know how it is while you're dealing with insurance companies and you're trying to figure out what they're going to pay for, what we're going to have to pay for, and how it's all going to work, getting bids and prices and all of that. Several weeks into that, we decide that we need to go to the store. We remember have a toddler. My wife is pregnant, and nothing is on our first floor at all. And so we decided to go to the store, and it was raining. We had this kind of like rainstorm that had come into Fort Worth. Like we get around here, you know, where it rains for like 700 days straight, and the ballpark gets underwater and all that kind of stuff. That kind of thing happened in Northwest Tennessee. That was what was happening in Fort Worth. It had been raining for a long time, I remember. And we needed to go to the store, and because our cars were no longer in their house, we had to go outside to get in our car. So we went to the garage to get an umbrella, because not only do we keep all of our furniture from the first floor in the garage, before we kept our umbrellas as well. And so I go out into the garage, and I don't turn on the light in the garage because I know where the umbrella is. I just kind of walk around the corner, grab the umbrella, and I walk back in the house and I shut the door. I'll never forget it because it was raining outside, and I remember thinking to myself, I know that it's raining outside, but it sounds an awful lot like it's raining inside our garage. I go back out into the garage where all of our furniture is and cut on the light. And about 25% of our garage ceiling had caved in because we had some flashing on our roof that had been leaking all during the spring. We didn't know because we didn't park in our garage anymore because our living room was in there. And it had wet, it like soaked down the drywall in the ceiling, and it just kind of caved in, and now the living room furniture that we had moved out into the garage so that it wouldn't get wet because the refrigerator had leaked now was getting rained on. Now, I didn't own a tarp. So I look at my wife, who's pregnant with a child, holding a toddler, and I go, call the insurance company, call a roofer, like we've got to get this fixed, and I am done. Like I've had it. You understand? I'm frustrated. Tube hanging out of my arm. Like done. And I go, I'm going to buy a tarp. Like I just got to get out. I'm going to buy a tarp. So I jump in. We still own this GMC Yukon. We jumped in this GMC Yukon, which at this point was new to us. And I began driving to Walmart. We're 2 miles from Walmart because we lived in Fort Worth. Everything was close by. So we're 2 miles from Walmart. I'm driving to Walmart, and you know, sometimes you just got to get out. Sometimes you just, no. And I'm driving. I'm not speeding that I know of. Like I'm just driving, and I'm kind of having one of these moments. And I go to brake at a light. There's a stoplight right at the corner where Walmart is. And as I put the brakes on to the Yukon, I wish I was making this up. A stream of water comes from where the sunroof is in the Yukon and lands on my knee. I kind of understand what it means to feel overwhelmed, right? Like, have you ever had those moments where it just seems like nothing is going to go right? Where nothing could possibly be good in this world anymore. Times where you just are at the end of yourself, the end of your rope, the end of whatever it is, and you just need out. You just need to be done. That's just all you have left. We can tell stories, right, of that time like when you're in college and you know that the semester's coming to end, you've got 5 papers and 3 exams and everything just kind of caving in, and you know that if you don't pass these classes, you don't graduate, and you don't know what mom and dad are going to do, and you're so stressed about it, and you're so anxious about it, you feel that. When your kids' teachers call you and they go, hey, they're not going to make it. Or, hey, we need to sit down and talk. When your husband and your wife sits you down and they go, listen, things aren't as you seem. Here's really the truth of what's going on. When the creditors keep calling, you don't know what you're going to do. When that job that you worked so hard to get is now done because they can't afford to keep it anymore, and they let you know that you're going to be let go. And you don't know what the future holds, and you've maxed out your credit, you've maxed out your retirement, and you're at the end of yourself, and you feel so anxious and so overwhelmed when the doctor comes in and says, listen, don't really know what we can do anymore. You think about the kids you have at home. You think about the burdens that you're carrying, and it gets so heavy, so exhausting. You're so overwhelmed. Listen, if that's you, and I bet it probably is, you're in really good company. We just found out recently through some studies that have been done through the American Medical Association, the United States is ranked in the world now as the #1 most anxious country in the world. Congratulations. Is a severe issue going on in our nation. So much so it's hurting our economy. $300 billion a year is spent in medical costs to deal with anxiety and depression and overwhelmedness, if that's a word, as well as in lost wages. $300 billion. It's become so bad that every generation is 3 times more likely to experience depression than the generation before. Anxiety is the #1 mental health disorder among women in the United States, and it's #2 among men, second only to alcohol and drug abuse. And can I just tell you something real quick? This is not just an adult grown-up problem. This is a kid problem. School teachers understand this so well. But do you understand that the average child today carries as much anxiety as a psychiatric patient in the 1950s? We live in a world where it's on the rise, where we are anxious and we're worried and we're overwhelmed with life and everything that it brings to us. And the thing is that anxiety and overwhelm is bad enough, but it leads us to other sinful behaviors. It leads us to self-medicate. It leads us into drug and alcohol addiction. It leads us to escape into television or media or our phones or a computer or pornography. It leads us to uncontrolled emotion and anger, where we kind of just explode on everybody like a volcano that's around us. You've experienced it, and your family's experienced it, and you live with the reality of that every day. The worst of it all, I think, is that it steals our joy from us. C.S. Lewis would write over half a century ago that we probably sin more by disobeying the biblical command to rejoice than by anything else. What anxiety and being overwhelmed has done is it's stolen who we are. It's stolen our joy. And it's caused us to lose sleep, and it's caused us to get ulcers, and it's caused us to try to figure all kinds of ways out to escape. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to actually talk a little bit about what it looks like to be overwhelmed and some things that we can do. Because the Bible actually talks an awful lot to overwhelmed people. People that found themselves depressed. People that found themselves anxious. People that found themselves worried. People that found themselves at the end of themselves. And what's interesting is as we begin to look at Scripture, it continues to direct us in a common place. So the next few weeks, we're going to be kind of looking at that and seeing if we can't learn something from what the Bible has to teach about being overwhelmed. And today we go to talk to a group of people who were really, really, really overwhelmed. We're going to read from the Old Testament from a guy named Isaiah. Isaiah was a prophet 700 years or so before Jesus would walk on the earth. And Isaiah talked about a time when the nation of Israel would be judged. For instance, Isaiah would live through the northern kingdom being invaded by Assyria and carried off into captivity. He would prophesy about a time when Babylon would come and take over the southern kingdom of Judea and Jerusalem and cart off those Jews into captivity. And while in captivity in Babylon, Isaiah even predicted that the people would begin to wonder where God had gone, where God had been. Why had he forgotten about the nation of Israel? Why had he turned his back on us? But what Isaiah is going to remind us of today is that just because it seems like God isn't there or God doesn't care, that doesn't mean that God isn't at work. And as he makes a turn in his prophecy in Isaiah chapter 40, we're going to see how Isaiah instructs his people, reframes their perspective, and helps them deal with the anxiety and the overwhelmedness that they are dealing with. Isaiah chapter 40, we're going to begin reading in verse 27. Isaiah writes these words, "Why do you complain, Jacob, And why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord? My cause is disregarded by my God. Now, this is kind of a silly question, if you ask me. Isaiah looks at the nation of Israel that's sitting in captivity in Babylon, right? He's prophesying to them, and he's going, why do you think God has turned his back on you? The answer is real simple. Because our circumstances are crummy. Because if God hadn't turned his back on us, then we would still be living in Jerusalem. We wouldn't have been conquered by Babylon. We wouldn't be in captivity. The temple wouldn't be destroyed. The answer is pretty simple, Isaiah. The reason why we think God has disregarded us or turned his back on us is because, man, it sure looks like he has. And the reason that this is such an important question for us to kind of ask as we get started is because that's the natural place where we go today as well when we come to the end of ourselves, isn't it? When the circumstances get bigger than we can control, when the circumstances get bigger than we ever thought we would be able to handle, when life seems to kind of cave in around us, and all of the people that are in authority are telling us that there's something wrong with us and they can't help us, there's nothing they can do for us, it is really, 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 really easy to kind of take a peek at God and go, God, where are you in all this? God, what are you doing in all this? God, why have you forgotten about me? And I think it's so easy for us to kind of read what Israel was dealing with and see the struggles that they're having and understand the question they're asking because, frankly, we ask that question all the time. I can't tell you the number of times. I have told you. Some of the times that I've laid in hospital beds and asked God why in the world he was doing this to me. Come on. Maybe you've experienced that too. But what Isaiah is looking at the nation of Israel is going, listen, why is it you're thinking that way? I'm going to reframe your perspective. I'm going to take your perspective off of your circumstances and put them somewhere else. Look what he says in verse 28. He says this, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. Now this seems like kind of just lip service on the surface level here. It doesn't seem like this means a whole lot, but embedded in these words that Isaiah is saying to the nation of Israel, there's some really important characteristics of God that draw our perspective back to just exactly who he is. First thing it says is that God is an everlasting God. This little Hebrew word can mean that he's God of the long view. It means that his perspective is different than our perspective because God is everlasting and we are finite. Whereas we see a portion of the picture, God sees the whole picture. Let me see if I can explain it this way. My kids, especially Abigail, love to be in plays. They love to be on stage. They love to act. They love to sing. They love to dance. They love to do whatever that may be. And Abigail has been a part of a number of plays, some that are kind of coming up. And in every play, she stands on a stage, whether it's a masquerade theater or the civic auditorium, and there's a curtain that's there, and kind of the action is going to take place behind the curtain. In fact, that's how we know the play starts, is that the curtain is open, and then we can see what's going on the stage, right? You with me? Stick with me. Now imagine that the curtain is only opened up a third of the way. So you've got a third of the stage behind the curtain, a third of the stage where the curtain is open, and then another third of the stage where the curtain is closed. Now imagine that Abigail was in a play that took place on a stage where the curtain is only opened up a third of the way. From our perspective in the congregation, in the crowd, we may not be able to see everything that's going on. In fact, we won't be able to see everything that's going on. There's parts of the play that are going to be behind the curtain that are kind of shielded from us. And we can only get a little glimpse of what happens every time the action moves in front of the open curtain. Now let me explain what Isaiah is trying to make us understand by pointing to God being eternal in comparison to our being finite. There are parts of the play that we're involved in that are happening before our time and after our time. In our view and not in our view. Are you with me? Things that we can see and things that we can't see. And from our perspective, it may appear that what's happening is terrible. From our perspective, it may seem that what's happening is overwhelming and unbearable. From our perspective, we may not see God at work at all from the little bit that we're able to see. But what Isaiah is reminding us of is that God doesn't have the same view that we have. God is eternal. He's the God of the long view. He understands what has happened before and what is going to happen next. He understands what's happening halfway around the world and what's happening here. He understands things that we don't understand. In fact, he finishes this up by saying, of his understanding, no one can fathom. Meaning that God is God and we are not, and he understands things that we don't understand. As a result, it's real easy for us to kind of lean on our own understanding, right? And go, God, I don't understand what you're doing. Where God's going, listen, just trust me, because there's a bigger picture that you don't see. There's a bigger picture that you don't understand. After all, as I would say, He is the creator of the heavens and the earth. He understands. He is all-powerful. He does not grow weak or weary. He has not given up on you. And your bad circumstances were not a surprise to Him. See, they're a surprise to us, right? The diagnosis, conversation we didn't want to have, the turn in the stock market, those are things that are surprises to us. Things that maybe we weren't expecting or couldn't have foreseen. But they are not surprises to an everlasting, all-understanding, all-knowing God. He is not surprised by your circumstances. He knew about it all along. Now here's where the pushback comes. Jeremy, if God knew about it, why didn't He stop it? God, if you knew about it, why didn't He do something about it? You understand He is doing something about it. You understand He is at work. You understand, although you may not understand it, although you may not see it, a God of the long view that is everlasting and eternal, He is at work. We say it all the time. Never mistake God's silence for His action. But God knows exactly where you are right now. God knows exactly where your heart is right now. It was not a surprise to Him, and He is at work right now. He continues to say this. Verse 29. He, this is God, what He's going to do. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Last week I told you I got to go hang out with 38 middle schoolers in our nation's capital. It was crazy. And one of the things that happens when you are entrusted with 38 middle schoolers and a handful of adults is that communication between the adults is important. And I have a cell phone that's now a couple years old, and the battery that just doesn't last. Maybe you guys have been there with your cell phone. So like by 10 o'clock in the morning or so, the battery on my phone is just about dead if I don't keep it charged and plugged in. But when you're on the go in the nation's capital, you don't have a lot of opportunity to sit down and plug into the walls. You just have to keep going. So what I would do is we have some portable phone chargers. You can go buy them at Walmart or whatever. We have a couple different brands. And so what we do is we carry those around in our backpacks or our back pockets. We put them on the bus with us. And so when we had a chance to plug in or our battery power kind of got low, we could kind of plug into that charger. And it would give us a kick of juice. It would give us a little bit extra power to kind of make it through the day with our phones. Here's what God promises you. This is pretty neat. See, God understands where you are and He's at work, but He also understands that you need to be able to make it through the day. He understands that you need to be able to get up in the morning and put one foot in front of the other. He knows that you're going to need some strength because guess what? You are going to get weak, and you are going to get tired, and you are going to get weary, and you're going to come to the end of yourself. And so what God does is He gives strength. He gives power so that you can make it through your day. And don't feel bad that you run low on power. Don't feel bad that you find yourself weak. Look what He says next. He says this. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. I guess, I can tell you, I'm 40 years old. That's not funny, son. We go walking around DC, like you go walking around, like you don't get on a cab. Like with 37, 38 kids, you don't get in a cab. You walk where you're going. You want to know what's interesting? Is at 40 years old, Jay and I, like we made it around DC fine. We walked 10, 12 miles. I mean, like we walked a lot. We walked not 10, 12 miles. We walked like 20,000 steps or so a day, somewhere like 6, 7, 8 miles a day. It was a lot of walking. Just everywhere. You don't walk anywhere slowly because nothing happens slowly in the nation's capital. No one meanders over to the Lincoln Memorial. You like half sprint over there. What's interesting is I was able to make it at my age. I thought that was kind of neat. I thought that was pretty good. It made me feel good about myself. But you want to know what I thought was funny? 8th graders that would look at me and go, do we have to walk there? Yes, we have to walk there. And by the way, I'm 3 times your age, right? Like, suck it up, Buttercup. We're going. Come on, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't stay behind. You have to come with us, right? Middle schoolers that are going, I'm so tired, right? Do you want to know what's great about that? Isaiah brings this up. He goes, listen, even youths, even young people, if they get tired, you shouldn't feel bad for getting tired. You shouldn't feel bad for feeling overwhelmed. You shouldn't feel bad for coming into yourself. Even young people. By the way, he continues, he says, even young men, right, stumble and fall. This little phrase, young man, refers to people that were selected for military service. These are soldiers. The trained individuals. The ones that should be able to make it. The ones of anybody that could be able to make it. The best of the best. While in D.C., our team got to go, our group got to go to Arlington National Cemetery. That was where I was reminded of this. You look out over thousands and thousands and thousands of white tombstones where our young men, those trained for military service, the best of the best, the most in shape, the most qualified, even they stumble and fall. But let me tell you why this is a big deal. This is so important. What Isaiah is trying to remind us of is this: no one is exempt from feeling overwhelmed. No one is exempt from being tired. No one is exempt from stumbling and falling. No one is exempt from the pressures and the anxieties and the frustrations and the struggles of life. And the reason that this is a big, big, big deal is because some of you I know that are in the middle of that right now are looking at other people and you're frustrated because it seems like they have it all together and it seems like they can make all the right decisions. It seems like things never go wrong for them. And you look at them and they're able to get up every day and attack the day and you just don't have the strength inside you and you feel less than and you feel weak. And you feel vulnerable and you feel frustrated because you don't have it in you anymore because you've come to the end of yourself. Here's what Isaiah is saying to you in the 21st century. Everybody gets there. Everybody gets there. And you shouldn't feel bad because of it. Because even those that are young and should be able to handle it, even they get there. Even those that are trained for military service and struggle, even they will stumble and fall. Don't feel bad. Instead, look what he says. The last verse. Love this. Verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord, they will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles, and they will run and not grow weary, and they will walk and not be faint. This little word hope in the Hebrew, some translations have it wait. Those who wait in the Lord. The idea is this: those who actively anticipate. Actively anticipate. Let me give you an illustration to see if this makes sense. I love Christmas, always have loved Christmas. In fact, still, even though I've already told you I'm 40, even though I'm 40, I still love Christmas. I love going to bed on Christmas Eve and wondering what Santa Claus is going to bring me tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like my kids, they love that. They go to bed. It's one of the few nights, I get in trouble for this. It's one of the few nights a year that they sleep together in the same bed because they're just so excited. Right? Both of them, they always have, and I hope they always do. It's just one of those things that our kids, they get excited about what is to come. See, here's what I think about when I think about what Isaiah is telling us, those who actively anticipate, those who wait with hope on the Lord. It's this idea that they know something good is coming, and even though it's not here now, we are anticipating it. We are looking forward to it. We are excited about it, and we just can't wait. Even though right now, we're not there. Even though right now we're not experiencing it, we know that it is to come, right? This is why the psalmist would write later that though sorrow may last for the night, joy comes in the morning. It's the idea that the sun will rise, the light will shine, and we will get up tomorrow and put one foot in front of the other, not because our circumstances may change, but because we're actively anticipating what it is that God is going to do. Here's what he says. Those who live with that kind of active anticipation, those who lean into God and His provision, they will find new strength. Do you want to know how the Hebrew is worded here? This is so cool. Scripture literally says that God is willing to exchange strength. The idea is that the Creator God that Isaiah just spoke about, the everlasting God, the eternal God, the God of the long view, the Creator of the heavens and earth, that God whose understanding no one can fathom, that God is willing to take His strength and exchange it with yours. And when you are actively anticipating what it is God's going to do, you will find new strength. Let me tell you what this doesn't mean. And this is an important distinction. This doesn't mean that your circumstances will change. It doesn't mean that God will automatically make you healthy, wealthy, wise, and beautiful. It means that God will change your perspective away from your circumstances and focus it on what it is that He has done and is doing and will do. And though you may not understand it, though it may not make sense, you'll be able to get up in the morning and put one foot in front of the other and face the day with a new strength, with a new courage, with a new unction. Because you know that He is going to do what He says He will do. He'll soar high on wings like eagles. An ancient proverb says that when a young eagle would molt, he would get new strength. That's the idea that's coming to mind here in Isaiah. And you'll run and you'll not get weary. Does that mean you're not going to get tired? No, of course you're going to get tired. But for that day, God will give you the strength that you need. You'll walk and you'll not faint. You'll be able to make it through this situation, this season, and into the next season because you know that God is at work, even though you don't understand it. So I thought, how can we kind of whittle this down? How can we kind of make this into something that you can remember? Because there's three kind of big ideas that I think Isaiah is getting at here. Number one is that God knows where you are and is actively at work in your circumstances. That's important. But because God knows what we don't know and sees what we don't see, there are times it may feel like He is disengaged, even when He's not. So instead, what we've got to do is we've got to lean into His goodness. Lean into His work. And when we do that, He will give us the strength for today. I put it like this, if you needed something to take home. God knows where you are and is willing to give you the strength you need for today. This is important. God knows where you are and is willing to give you the strength you need for today. God knows where you are. He's willing to give you the strength you need today. What that means for some of us is that means we're going to have to lean into God. It means we're going to have to look at Him and go, God, even though I don't understand, I'm going to trust you. God, even though my circumstances are terrible right now, God, I know you're at work. Even though I don't get why I'm going through what I'm going through, I'm convinced, as Paul was, that God is working all things together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. I'm telling you, when we're willing to lean into God and recognize He knows where we are and He's at work, then He is willing to give us the strength we need for today. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Here's the question I want you guys to really struggle with and wrestle with as we're praying. Where is the area that you need to lean into God? What is the area of your life where you're feeling overwhelmed? Where you're feeling anxious? Where's the area of your life where you feel like God has turned His back on you and where He's no longer paying attention? Where have your circumstances gotten so big that they've eclipsed your God? Today, would you be willing to just go, God, I don't even understand, but I'm willing to take a step in your direction. God, I came today. I stumbled into church this morning. I literally was fainting my way into the seat that I'm in right now because my circumstances are so bad. But God, right now, I'm just going to ask you to give me the strength, to give me the perspective, to give me the hope that there is a better tomorrow. Yeah. How can you know that's true? Because the grave is still empty. We sang this earlier, right? That for every burden, there's an empty grave. You understand that? Like a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated the fact that Jesus had risen from the dead and dealt with our two greatest problems, the problem of sin and the problem of death. Like, we understand that. And although it may not feel that God is for us, when someone dies for you, they are for you. You can trust Him. You can trust that He is at work in your life because He has already been at work in your life. In just a minute, we're going to pray. I'm going to give you some time in silence. Because maybe you just need to pray with God in silence, right? God, help me to see you at work. Help me to lean into your provision. Help me to trust you more. Help me to actively anticipate what is coming. And then give me the strength to make it through today. After a moment of silence, I'm going to pray for us and we'll be dismissed. When we are, I want to invite you, if you need to talk to somebody more about maybe finding a therapist or someone you can help work through some of these issues with, finding a doctor that maybe can help you deal with some of these issues, or you just want someone to pray with you and help figure out the next steps as you actively anticipate what God is doing, I want to direct you to our starting point room. And there we'll have some men and some women that can talk with you and pray with you and help you as we take the next steps in our life. But right now, I wonder if we could just bow our heads and go to the Lord and ask Him to give us the strength that we need for today. God, every single one of us knows what it's like to carry burdens and to feel overwhelmed by our circumstances. Either we have been there, or we are there, or maybe we soon will be there. God, given our current situation in life, our current society that we live in, it's everywhere. It's inescapable. God, it's from a point of desperation that we come at the end of ourselves, at the end of our rope. Some of us wanting out, some of us wanting to be done, some of us wanting to give up and to not even get out of bed tomorrow. God, it's encouraging to know that even the best of us will struggle with this. And even the best of us will find ourselves overwhelmed from time to time. And in those moments, maybe even right now, pray that you would remind us you are a God of the long view. You're an eternal God that sees what we don't see and understands what we don't understand. Though our circumstances may loom large, they are not larger than the God who created the universe. Though our trials may be difficult, they are not something that is too difficult for our God. And though it may seem like you are disengaged, may we never mistake your silence for your action. Because God, I am just naive enough to believe that in the darkest of night, you are at work. You're working my life, and you're in the work of the lives of those who love you and are called according to your purpose. And though we may never see the good on this side of eternity, God, there is good that comes in the morning. So for some of us, that means that we've just got to take a step into you. God, we've got to learn what it looks like. We've got to learn what it looks like to actively anticipate what is just on the other side of the horizon. Actively anticipate what it is that you are doing in our world and in our lives. And though we may never have our circumstances change, you promise to give us new strength. you promised to give us your strength. So God, we ask for that now. Give us a renewed fervor for life. Give us a new hope that's based in you, not our circumstances. Give us a peace that's not linked on diagnoses or bank accounts, but on the work of Jesus Christ. And restore to us the joy of our salvation, the joy of the empty tomb. Because Satan has taken it from us for way too long. And he's filled our hearts with fear and anxiety, doubt, and overwhelmedness. And that is not what you want for us. And so right now I pray that you work in everybody's heart and help us to step into you and recognizing that you are willing to give us the strength we need for today. For that man, for that woman here who needs to talk with someone, who needs to pray with someone, I pray that you would give them the courage as we dismiss to go to our starting point room, to pray with someone, maybe even to give their life to you for the very first time. And in doing that, we pray that you receive all the glory and all the honor and all the praise as the everlasting God, the creator of the universe that never grows weak or weary. We love you. We trust you. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you guys so much for coming. See y'all next week, part 2.